the pathophysiology in the liver and how it is regulated by genomic and epigenetic mechanisms, specifically about the sex-dependent actions of growth hormone, which might be a little surprising to you all, I hope. So, it is clear that genetic factors determine the onset and progression of liver disease. And liver disease is still a heavy burden for public health around the globe, and especially in our country, in Mexico. As you can see here, cirrhosis of the liver, which is end-stage liver disease, is in these statistics, it shows us the fourth leading cause of death. Actually, in 2017, it moved to the fifth, but it's not because we did something better, or perhaps Dr. Kersenovich will convince you otherwise, but here it shows that it's because there is more violence, unfortunately. But yes, Mexico is specifically affected by liver disease, and we will talk a little bit about why. In comparison, this is Israel, and the 10 leading causes of death, and liver cirrhosis is not one of them, and this is the case for many other countries. So why is that? Why are we Mexicans more affected by liver disease? So in part, this is explained by genetics. Of course, there are environmental factors that can explain part of the increased susceptibility, but I've been focused all my career on genetics, so I want to convince you about the genetic mechanisms. So first, while I was in Dr. Kersenovich's lab, we were studying polymorphisms in the genes that code for alcohol metabolizing enzymes, and later on we started analyzing some polymorphisms in PNPLA3, which is a gene that has been already associated with alcoholic fatty liver disease and non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. And more recently, in nutrition, where I work, some investigators are researching these new genes, these new polymorphisms associated with these SLC16A11, that both polymorphisms confer higher susceptibility to non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, specifically in the Mexican population. And of course, viral hepatitis is still important, and Dr. Kersenovich will talk about that. But today, I'm going to focus on another genetic mechanism or genetic factor that plays a role not only in the susceptibility to develop liver disease, also plays a role in who and how someone is going to progress to fibrosis and even to cirrhosis and end-stage liver disease. It has an influence on liver transplant and more significantly on the development of hepatocellular carcinoma. And that factor, that genetic factor, is the sex of the individual, of the patient. And that is because liver disease is highly sexually dimorphic. As you can see here, these are some examples of why liver disease, or examples of sexually dimorphic liver disease. For example, ischemic damage is more common in males than females. Chemically induced cirrhosis is more common in males than females. Fibrosis progresses more rapidly in males. Autoimmune liver disease is more common in females. Females are more susceptible to toxicity from alcohol. So, and as I said, one of the best examples of this is hepatocellular carcinoma, so liver cancer. And this is because liver cancer is about 3 times more, the incidence is 3 times higher in males than it is in females, as you can see in this graph. But not only liver disease is sexually dimorphic, liver physiology is sexually dimorphic as well. Here in this table, I'm showing you some examples of genes that code for different drug metabolizing enzymes. And as you can see here, their substrates are some of the most common drugs that everyone uses. And the dose is not different for males than it is for females. So you can see here that some of these genes or proteins actually have sex bias, both in their gene expression and at the protein level. And this results in differences between sexes in clearance rates, in side effects, in lipid profiles, etc. So this is something that it needs to be considered, and actually the NIH has pushed forward that for many of the studies, both males and females need to be included because it is more and more recognized there are differences between the sexes. But now we know from studies in the lab that I worked on at BU that there are more than 1,000 genes that are differentially expressed between males and females. And these, surprisingly, the main hormonal regulator of these differences are not the sex hormones directly, either it's growth hormone. So this is because growth hormone secretion patterns are sex-specific and regulate liver gene expression. You can see here in the rat where these differences are more dramatic, that in the male, growth hormone is secreted in a highly pulsatile manner with periods, extended periods where growth hormone is practically absent from the circulation, whereas in the female, there's always a baseline level of growth hormone in the circulation. In the mouse and in the human, which are more similar, although you don't see these huge peaks in the male and lower peaks in the female, you see again these periods where growth hormone is absent only in the male and not in the female. And it has been already recognized that this interpeak period is what determines the dimorphic gene expression. And this is because growth hormone signaling pathway through the receptor and the JAK-STAT pathway correlates with the pulses of growth hormone. And STAT5 activity, as you can see here, follows the pulses of growth hormone. In the male, you can recognize when the STAT5 is active and inactive, whereas in the female, it's harder to see this pulsing. And that's why STAT5 is the transcription factor that is essential to mediate these sex-specific effects of growth hormone. But how do the sex-specific plasma growth hormone profiles establish and maintain sex differences in the liver? So to understand better this interesting mechanism, we use different rodent models. So one model that you can obviously use is take out the pituitary gland and remove all growth hormone. But of course this has a caveat because the hypophysis or the pituitary gland secretes a lot more hormones than only growth hormone. So we did a lot of experiments with the hypophysectomy model that if you take out the hypophysis, you remove liver sex differences completely. But you don't really want that all the time. So another model that I use mostly, and I'm going to focus on that, is the continuous growth hormone model, by which you take male mice, adult male mice, because these differences are only apparent after puberty, and you infuse them with growth hormone continuously, and that way you override the endogenous pulsatile pattern of growth hormone, and you feminize liver gene expression. And I'm going to show you that this is true, that I was able to feminize the liver of male mice. So in order to do that, we take male mice, adult males, as you can see here, and we place this infusion pump, and we infuse them with continuous growth hormone in different time points. We take out the liver of these little mice, and we use a lot of methods of next generation sequencing, chromatin immunoprecipitation, DNA hypersensitivity, RNA sequencing. I'm going to go to show you some of the results we get from that. In the interest of time, I'm not going to get into all the details, but I hope I can convince you that I can feminize the liver. So here in the first slide, so what I'm showing you here, these are results from RNA-seq, from RNA sequencing. And in the y-axis, you can see the male to female ratio of these genes, so how sex-specific they are. And in the x-axis is just the expression, how highly expressed they are in the liver. So as you can see here, the most highly male-specific genes are obviously the Y chromosome genes, and then they obviously don't change much because we're not changing. The mouse is still male. And then in the bottom here, you see X-cyst, the X chromosome gene, that is obviously not changing. And these are other highly female-specific genes. And among them, I don't know if you recognize it, but some of them, or most of them, are important proteins involved in metabolism of drugs and endogenous compounds. So what you can see here in red are all those genes that are highly feminized after treatment. So those in red are fully feminized. So I was able to feminize, meaning they are expressed at the level of the intact female. And if you look here more closely, this is again results from RNA sequencing. You can see that not all the genes change at the same time. There are genes that change very rapidly when you treat them with continuous growth hormone. Even by 10 hours, they are already fully feminized. And these are like the female-specific genes, as you can see here, and they are induced. Whereas the male-specific genes are repressed. You are losing their expression as you treat with continuous growth hormone. And you recognize these different patterns of response of these genes. And we wanted to understand a little bit better why is this the case. And highly female biased genes are late responsive. So in order to better understand what are the differences between these genes, we went and looked for how these genes are regulated epigenetically. So in the lab that I worked on, the Waxman lab, we used to try to understand all these different mechanisms. So we know that DNA wraps around the histones, these proteins creating the nucleosomes, and DNA itself can be methylated, and also these nucleosomes for higher order organization of the chromatin and ultimately the chromosome. And you can see here long-range interactions. You can see how the transcription factors bind. But today I'm going to focus mostly on the chromatin modification, meaning these proteins called the histones have these tails, as you can see them, and some post-translational modifications on the histone tails regulate these nucleosome dynamics and control how the gene is expressed. So there is something that is recognized as the histone code, and these are all the different chemical modifications that can happen in the histone tails. And some of these modifications are already recognized. For example, some types of or some methylations at specific residues in the protein are recognized as being activating marks, whereas others are recognized as being repressive marks, that they are associated with repression of the genes that are in that area. But it's not that it's just on and off. All these modifications, what they do is they fine-tune the gene expression. So you can have poised states, active state, inactive states. It depends where in the chromatin this is happening. So we use all these technology and next generation sequencing to try to understand what was happening when I feminize, when I go from a male liver to a female liver through continuous growth hormone treatment. So is the underlying chromatin environment different of the genes that are responding rapidly versus the genes that respond late? What happens when these genes are changing? Can we see changes in chromatin accessibility? Can we see transcription factor binding, and which transcription factors are binding? And ultimately, how these results in changes in gene expression. So the first thing we did, and I'm going to try to simplify this as best as I can. So we took all the liver expressed genes and we classified them in clusters depending on the chromatin or histone marks that were around the transcription start site and the end site. And you can see different clusters here depending on the marks that were expressing and how accessible the chromatin was, how open the chromatin was. And we can recognize three super states, let's say. One is active, one is poised, and one is inactive. And these are characterized by different histone modifications. So this is histone 3, lysine 27, trimethylation, for example. And what we saw is that those genes that were responding early to the continuous growth hormone treatment were generally in the active state already, in the male liver. Whereas those genes that respond late were generally in an inactive state. Meaning that a gene that is in the male liver in an inactive state will take longer to respond and to become active. Whereas a gene that is already in a poised state, so ready to be expressed, when you put continuous growth hormone, it's more easily feminized. And as we treat with continuous growth hormone in a time course, you can clearly see that these marks are changing as I infuse with continuous growth hormone. And this was surprising to see such dynamic and such beautiful results for some of the genes. This is not the case for everything, obviously, but you can see here this is A1BG, it's a gene that is clearly highly expressed in the female. In the male, you don't see anything. And as you treat with continuous growth hormone, you can see that by 4 days, the level of expression of the gene is already exceeds the female level of expression, and this correlates, I'm showing you K27 acetylation, which is an activating mark, and you can see that this is also increasing at the level of it. Whereas a male-specific gene, you can see here it's scarified, it's expressed more highly in the male, is repressed by continuous growth hormone, and you can see that as well with the histone modification. So why is this important? Just to get back to the medical side of it. Well, genes involving lipid metabolism that are sex-biased have already been associated with dyslipidemia and cardiovascular disease in humans, and this could explain some of the difference between males and females. If you disrupt all these axes, growth hormone, STAT5, this leads to liver fibrosis and liver cancer, and commonly patients with liver disease have growth hormone axis disrupted. And also, some people are trying to use growth hormone as a potential treatment for non-alcoholic liver disease and liver fibrosis. So we need to better understand the mechanisms behind it and the patterns of growth hormone themselves. So in the time that I have left, I want to focus on a very interesting mechanism, which is one of the histone marks, which is K27 trimethylation, which is a highly repressive mark. And what we saw in many studies in my lab is that if you take the male liver and you look for a female-specific gene that is clearly not being expressed, it's repressed because it's in the male liver, you see it covered in K27 trimethylation, in this histone modification. Whereas if you look in the female liver, a male-specific gene that is not being expressed, it is repressed, but not by this specific histone modification. So we wanted to understand why. So we went and looked for the actual enzyme that is responsible for methylating the K27, putting this specific mark. So we use a hepatocyte-specific EZH1 and EZH2 knockout. So EZH1 and 2 are the catalytic domains of the PRC2, of the polycomb repressing complex. And some of you might be familiar with EZH1 or 2, because now it's important as a target for many cancers, and it's involved in many in carcinogenesis, etc. So the first thing we noticed when we knocked down EZH1 and EZH2 in the liver was that a great percentage of sex-biased genes were affected. And you would think that something as important as PRC2 or EZH2 would have a greater effect. And it does have a great effect, but it specifically targets sex-biased genes. And specifically, as we expected, because of the results that I showed you, highly female-biased genes are inducing the male liver, because they lose the mark that is repressing them, so they are inducing the male liver. And because of that, because female-biased genes are induced, you lose liver sex bias in general. And this is important because the combined loss of this enzyme results in liver fibrosis and impaired regeneration and higher mortality, etc. So this is also very important because, as I said, EZH2 is being targeted as a drug target in many cancers, so it's better to understand exactly what is happening. And this is just one example, just to integrate everything that I showed you, let's say. So this is how-to. How-to is, this is RNA-seq data, so expression data. You can see that in the males, this gene is not expressed. In the double knockout males, it is induced, whereas in the females and double knockout females, you can see that it's highly expressed. If you look at the histone modifications around it, you can see also that you are gaining in the knockout, you are gaining activating marks and you are losing the repressive mark. So this is one example of a gene that is differentially regulated in males and females, and it's important to understand why, and that's what we're trying to do. So it's a female-biased gene, it's induced in the knockout males, it's downregulated, and this gene happens to be downregulated in hepatocellular carcinoma, and it's inversely correlated with metastasis and survival. So these genes that are regulated by these mechanisms may be conferring some protection to the females compared to the males. So in conclusion, to this, you can see that growth hormone-regulated sex-biased liver physiology is dictated by different transcription factors arranged in a hierarchical network and by these dynamic sex-biased epigenetic states. K27 methylation-based repression is essential to establish and maintain growth hormone-regulated sex difference in the liver, and we found significant differences in the regulation of hepatocellular carcinoma and fibrosis-related genes between males and females, and these may be contributing to the differences in liver disease progression. Lastly, and just to tell you about the projects that are ongoing right now at Nutrición, or we're trying to do, is that recently, very recently, it was published that the gut microbiota may play a role as well in establishing these or maintaining these sex differences in the liver. So in germ-free mice, as you see here, the sex bias in the liver is lost. So this is something that was kind of unexpected, but it's something that is interesting and we need to incorporate into our models. So for future directions or things that I'm trying to do now is first determine the extent to which these liver disease protective genes in the female are really contributing to the differences between males and females, and trying to understand more what's this interaction between the gut microbiota and the host epigenome and how this impacts the liver phenotype. And maybe with Dr. Tovar that is sitting here, we can try different dietary strategies to modulate the gut microbiota, and then how that impacts the host epigenome and then the liver phenotype. And are there differences between males and females? How they respond to the dietary intervention? We don't know yet. So with that, I leave you, and I want to thank people from PU, my mentor, Dr. David Watzman, from Nutrición, Dr. Kresenovich, Dr. Tovar, Dr. Aminde Torres, Ricardo and Astrid in gastroenterology, and our collaborators in the NIH that provided the knockout mice.